wasn't so long ago, a different tale was told. The ancient script had been rewritten, no products are to be sold. Yeah, they got you where they want you. Yeah, they put a spell on you. Yeah, scared by these illusions, this new spooky ad campaign. Everywhere you turn, it's always pounding in your brain. From do not go to beaches, do not breathe the ocean air. Yeah, they stole $6 trillion just to show how much they cares. Yeah, they got you where they want you. Yeah, they put a spell on you. Yeah, they got you where they want you.
Yo, welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We're doing a random live show. It wasn't scheduled. I got my good friend Dustin Plattner on the line with me, man. I'm excited to get into a chat. We're gonna do a little freestyle convo and see where this goes. We got some great topics. It's been a while since I did a live show, so I hope everyone is doing well. Give us a shout out in the comments if you're tuning in and where you're tuning in from. And without further ado, Dustin, my brother, how are you doing today, man?
What's going on, Will? I'm doing well. Thanks for the invite. This is exciting to do a live with you and be on your platform. This is great. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, this will be fun. We had the pleasure to meet face-to-face at the Two Masks presentation by Mark Passio. That was fantastic. What'd you think about that event?
Yeah, it was really nice meeting you face to face there too. And yeah, that was incredible. It was really, really fun. The people were great. That information was so well done and so put together. And it was quite fascinating. And then I like how Passio Mark at the end tied it in to show like how much we're living in under this communist sort of covert agenda right now. He tied it all back in at the end. So that was just like, yep, right on. He nailed it right on again. So yeah, the people were great. It was a great time.
Yeah, it's always awesome to, connect with like-minded individuals over the ether webs, right? But then when you get into a live in the flesh conference and event, which I've really only been to about 4 or 5 events, it's something really special because you're connecting with people in the natural world, and you get to put faces to profile pictures and all kinds of stuff like this. So it's a real good connecting experience. So we had some really good chats there, and I wanted to bring you on to introduce people to you and your work, because you are actively doing the one great work right now. How long? First, give us a little intro on who you are, your background, and your content thus far.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, so my name is Dustin Plattner. I finished my doctorate in clinical psychology around 2012. So I finished that, and then I went into began to move into full-time practice then. And a lot of my training was with families and children. And that's how Will and I even got connected too, as I did the presentation on parenting, natural law parenting. We connected that way over the internet. So that's been a huge passion of mine, is helping families and children and getting to know the inner workings of a child's mind and how the parental dynamic those dynamics influence the parent and the child back and forth. And so then there's here in Los Angeles area, there's another analytics school where you can do postdoctoral work on psychoanalysis. And I did about another 2 years at that institute learning how the unconscious minds of children work. And so that was really fun. So then I started more specializing my practice working with children and families and in that realm. So that's been good, but then, the whole pandemic happened and I was already in sort of an anarcho-capitalist, a hyphenated anarchist. I was libertarian, then I went to anarcho-capitalism. So I already knew that, the government wasn't, it's not necessary and it's quite a bad deal. The government's a bad deal. So, but then as the whole pandemic happened, then I sort of had my big Kundalini awakening at that time because I didn't realize how quickly the government can come to my front door. That was what popped me, realizing how just, the arms of government are just in everything. So then, yeah, I got a hold of Passio's work and that was my awakening into esoteric knowledge, natural law. It really opened my care. And then when your care opens, right, there's two things that take place. You care that innocence is protected and you want to make innocence grow and thrive and nourish that. And then there's the other thing that happens where you want to protect it. And that's what sprung up into my heart. So from there, then it's like it's necessary to start learning more about this and then start teaching about natural law, objective morality, and then anything in my life that I can do that gets me outside of anything that I'm participating that's immoral. I started walking my way myself out of that. So now that I have my activist website, freeasabove.xyz, I see children and families in my practice, and then I got into some computer stuff because I'm a kind of a computer guy as well. So that's another thing that I do. But yeah, so there's a website. Yeah, thanks for showing it, Will. And then so that's what I do. I sort of juggle these three things to promote objective morality and how we can get ourselves free.
That's awesome, man. I love it. I love it. The website's really good.
Thanks, brother. Yeah.
Music and Sky Festival.
Yeah, that was so fun. Oh, that was a great time. Yeah. I got to speak with parents that's where I sort of solidified my natural law parenting idea. And Will was doing this before too. And I was thinking about it in a threefold part where, it's the emotional, the physical, and the moral. And that's how we approach children to give them the best upbringing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, in your line of work, you recognize the importance of parenting.
Yes.
And I remember in my journey to higher awareness, which started before I was a parent, but it really hit its zenith when my daughter's mother was pregnant, and then it started snowballing, and I started coming across the right information and applying it the right way. And of course, that becoming a parent, you're going to relate all this information to what you got going on in your life, and it's the bullseye right there, because the family dynamic is the foundation of society. This is how we all relate to the world. This is that first stage. It happens right within our own family, under our own roof. And
correct.
Like I explained many times in the past, if parents don't get on board with educating themselves on morality, natural law, the laws of nature, true freedom, then we're just going to constantly be playing catch up. It's just this conveyor belt that keeps, unfortunately, propagating the slave mentality, the victim
Yes.
mentality,
Yes.
and it's a huge problem. So in my personal work and in your work as well, we see this as this foundational, this crux of this category that must be talked about. And I love the work that you're doing, and you convey the message in a profound way. And this is the kind of stuff we need. We need more people like you coming out, doing the work in your own creative expression with the experience and your background that you have.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Will. Yeah. And the folks that should not be, that are in these power positions, they know this. This is what I can't.
My
That's
daughter
really.
ladies and gentlemen, we got to take a break because my daughter wanted to come show us
Oh,
our new companion.
wow. It looks like a she. Is it a she?
It's a
Or is
she.
it a he?
That's
Yep.
Powder. She's
Uh,
100% feral. I moved to the home that I'm at now, and there's chickens that lived here before me, and there's cats
uh-huh.
that lived here before me, and we're us loving animals, feeding
Uh-huh.
them. She's a new kitten. She's what, 7 weeks old.
Oh, yeah, she's super cute.
100%
Yeah.
feral, and this cat is so chill. Like, we can hold her, we can love on her. If she comes in the house once in a while, it's a trip. So we got a new
Yeah,
companion. So that was
that's
the
great.
introduction, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yep. But yeah, right, the powers that should not be know this. They know that the family is the pinpoint
Mm.
of a society, and they've, over all these decades and decades, even further back, they've slowly chipped away at that process. And it's a sense of holding back information that would be helpful for us when we're little, so we can grow up into right knowledge. And it's holding that information back and giving us a substitute that doesn't feed us, and and pulls away our divinity.
Mm.
We pull it, we give our authority away. And that's a whole nother aspect with schooling, as talk about with children and schooling, and even religions. It pulls our authority away and our divinity away, and that's what chips away at that process.
Yeah, well said. Our self-worth. Um,
Yes.
how was your upbringing? How were your
Yeah.
parents? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I was fortunate enough to have, like, very kind and loving parents, and and that they really tried hard. I grew up in the Midwest, and so Midwest values, I have a heart for Midwest values, because they, um be polite to people, be respectful, take responsibility, these things that were given to me. So my parents passed that along a lot. I grew up in a very fundamentalist church, Christian church, and legalism, which was a big thing, which truncated my spirituality. And then moving slowly away from that. Then um, when I was in my 20s, I left and I went to a Bible college to learn more about religions and theology and things like that, in this exoteric
Mm.
Christianity realm, right? So
Hmm.
so my undergrad is actually in Bible and theology.
Okay.
Protestant Bible and theology is my undergrad. So really wanted to learn more, because my mind I really like thinking and philosophy and getting down to roots and puzzle pieces. So I sort of like that process. I like my mind works that way. So that's why theology and philosophy sort of intrigued me. And I didn't really learn that in the church I grew up in. I didn't learn the details. It was more of sort of a systematic cookie cutter way of thinking about things. So
They're
it
not going
really
to get
wasn't.
down to the why.
Yeah, yeah. And so, correct. And so then went to Bible college, did that, and then came out to Los Angeles area for my doctorate work. But my upbringing was what had those sort of Midwestern Christian, exoteric Christian values, which have some goodness in them. It's great. But then realizing now about the depth of how our ancient past, how we've come to be, and how esoteric science really fills in a deeper picture of who we actually are. And the key thing is how to stop evil on this planet. That is the key thing. And esoteric mystery traditions show us how to do this, because it gets us in line with who we actually are, and brings our power back.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of the wrench in religion itself, right? Because there's this abdication that comes along with exoteric religion on all fronts, right? It's not just the classical cultural religions. You can get into Hinduism, Buddhism, all these other types of, isms, New Age. There's that abdication. And what it's concealing and occulting is radical responsibility. And of course, the occult art and sciences, that esoteric aspect where it's just, just submit, worship us, the system, its own system, repent or whatever. Give your consent over to this organization of mind, and then it's all good. Right? They don't really get into the fact of the matter that what you do here matters, morality matters, of course, what it is, getting down to the why.
Yes.
But it is the big wrench. And whenever I'm talking to someone that's stuck in this cul-de-sac of consciousness, they backpedal when you get down to those areas and those topics.
Yes.
Because it has built a padded room for the mind that they can just bounce off of, and it's a safety blanket as well. And as soon as you try to take that away, of course, they're going to get defensive. And radical responsibility is what we need to do. It's where we need to go. That's the mindset that we need to have, for sure. And occultism absolutely has that value.
Yes.
Front and center.
Yes. Correct. Yep. 100. Yeah. I like how you said that. And what Will said is, as probably your audience knows, but maybe some people listening to this on my end, he didn't say cult. He said occult. And that's the difference. So occultism is just ancient wisdom that has been around for so long, that teaches us the underpinnings of how this world works, the time and space reality that we're in right now. It teaches us the laws that are a part in it. And so once we know those laws, then we can act accordingly for growth. And if we go against those laws, well, then we get the negative consequences that shuts our growth down. So that's occult. It's just hidden knowledge. That's what occultare means, as your audience might know that. But yeah, it's hidden knowledge. And so Will and the folks that have gone before us, and Mark Passio's work, and everyone else is out there that's been doing this, they're trying to take it out of the hidden and put it into, so everybody can know it. Yeah, so those are, I had some other thoughts, but yeah, that's what my mind went as you said that.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because the people that do this work and convey this type of information, this is the foundational level that once we get to the majority, which is common sense, right, in the populace, it expands from there. Like, we're just laying the foundations. We have to climb out of the hole of negative knowledge just to get par, and then natural law keeps expanding. It's like how I express natural law, this is just like the starting point. It keeps going. We keep evolving in psychology into understanding what the human being can do, what it is, what reality can offer, and the mechanics of reality by our level of understanding the governing dynamics, right?
Yes.
The workings of the natural world, of creation. And this will continue as evolution proceeds and our awareness increases. So it's just digging ourselves out of this hole is, the prima, is the first thing. It's prime. That's what we have to do.
Yes.
So I like to ask people, and this could be redundant for my viewers and stuff, but I think it's important. I'm going to ask you, what's your definition of natural law? How do you explain it? I think this is important because there's an unlimited and infinite amount of ways to express this type of information and to define this type of information. And it's good to hear multiple types of people, especially, I'll end on this, especially when you have someone like Mark Passio, which is such a great mind for humanity, that it's easy to parrot what other people say. And I do that as well sometimes. He nails certain aspects, and I'm going to say it just like he defines it or whatever. But when you hear it in multiple different methods or from different people, even though it's similar or possibly the same, it's good to have that reiteration.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way we're at in sort of this negative knowledge, the definition of natural law can't be said enough or explained over enough until we get out of this pit that we're in. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So natural law. Well, I really like the understanding of it, where it's so you can do so many things in life. Again, every action, a right is any action that does not initiate harm. So it's almost unlimited. So what's natural law? When you have this, you just keep talking and talking. So I really like the understanding of knowing it from the negative, the apophatic way. And I like how Passio has explained that. That really helps organize it for me. So you can zoom in on what natural law is not. Then you can know what it is once you know what it is not. So that's really helpful because it helps a practical succinctness on it.
Definitely.
So yeah, well, we can see in nature that if you hit someone, it causes that person pain. If they didn't want to be hit, you can just observe that. And then that person might push back or hit back. Then you get a consequence coming back. Just makes sense. It's just commonsensical. So, yeah. I mean, that would be assault. So that's the negative. So that's not a right, because you don't have the right to take the bodily integrity away from somebody. You don't have that right. And the reason why is because you're going to get this negative consequence coming back. You can see there's static in it. There's nothing that's life-giving. It doesn't promote more, right? So that's just a basic understanding of hitting. And then you can just break it down to 6 more things, and then you're done. That's the totality of it. So, right, everyone all knows, and it's murder, assault and murder, and then stealing your possessions, that's theft, that's straight theft. And then deception is lying, right? So you're taking away a fully informed decision, right? That's taking the property. So we're still in that little category of the negative, of the how to understand it and what not to do. We're still in this category. And then rape, sexual choice to consenting adults. You can't take that sexual choice away. And then trespass, peaceful domicile, right? You can't take someone's peaceful domicile away. And then coercion, free will, take away someone's free will. You can't do those things. I think those are the 7. But those things right there, that's what you cannot do, because they have negative consequences. It's again, like I've talked about too in my videos, if people would want to watch some of those. We've learned it in kindergarten, don't hit, don't lie, don't steal, don't force someone not to do anything. We already know all this. So natural law, in the sense that we're saying it, is governing dynamics of human behavior, human action. So as you take an action, you can take any action you want because we have free will. But as you take an action, then there's consequences that follow that are built in. That's the law. It's built in, like gravity, thermodynamics. So you either get a positive consequence or a negative. It's just like a computer output, right? So that's it. So if you understand it in its negative, the 7 things of what, if you do, it causes harm, suffering for the victim, and then the perpetrator gets negative consequences coming your way. If you understand in those seven things, then you understand the totality of natural law that's built into this realm. And it's really that simple.
Absolutely. Yep. The moral standards, right, on how to interact in reality, interact with each other. Libercast says, what about carnism? Absolutely. Carnism, immoral actions, taking of something that is not yours, another animal's life, animal's free will.
Yes.
He also said consequentialism. That's exactly what it is, cause and effect.
Yes.
If this, then that. Like you said, it's like a computer program. It's ones and zeros. It's so simple. And yet, as human beings, we have higher order thought functions. We have logic and reason. And it's also written on the human heart. We have that greater capacity to feel and empathize. We can feel it when we're harming something, harming someone, some being. So there's these different modalities. How do you feel about children? And of course, children go through different stages. They have the egoic stage. That's, they're just focused on themselves. Then I get it. We're having a subjective experience in an objective reality, but that subjective experience, very young, it's all about you. You're getting to know yourself and your surroundings. But I think that young children, especially in, I would say, around 7 being that kind of, that number of divinity, around 7, 8, and 9, they can understand natural law. They can understand non-aggression and self-defense very well. It isn't until they get into, indoctrination school where it's conditioned and programmed out of them, or by their parents themselves. So how do you feel about just children and understanding these foundational concepts?
Yeah. I think even, it goes really young. I mean, as I've had children in my consulting room, 3 or 4 years old, just observing them and being with them and realizing you can see that, how sort of an ego state of mind, an autistic state of mind, that self-focus, that's there. But then you see these little glimpses where the child reaches out and has compassion, or grabs a doll and gently puts the doll and puts a blanket over the doll because the doll's going to sleep. Like the gentleness and the caring of the other. So
animals as well. Right?
Animals
it's
as
like
well as
it's inherent in us, right? I mean, a children or a child, put a knife to an animal's neck right in front of a young child and watch that child scream and cry and say no and run to the animal and stuff.
Correct.
And sure, that can vary. I've also seen young kids squash bugs like it's nothing, like it's play toys. But then again, there's a large parental influence there as well.
Correct. There is definitely a temperament of what we have when we come out of the chute. What we sort of are, are we more passive and sensitive? Are we more aggressive and assertive? Sort of that temperament that we have. There's varying other sort of temperaments, but yeah, the parental dynamic is really important to help raise the child to understand that yes, you don't smash bugs. You don't do those things just to be, just to be getting your aggression out. That's not how you navigate that space, right? And yes, it hugely about the parental care and love. So in analytic circles, they share that the personality of the child is formed in the first 6 months of life. So it's very young. And so the mother-baby bond is extremely important in utero, and then also the bond as the baby's born, and that process. If mothers can, breastfeeding is really important. Natural births are really important. If you can, I know there's many circumstances, but if you can aim for that or get help in that area, that's really important to shape the baby's personality. That care is given, that there is a dynamic of care coming in, and then there's a dynamic of loss because there's no care if they're hungry or their stomach hurts or whatever it might is, and then the care comes back, right? Mm-hmm. This back and forth shapes the baby's personality, which then ends up shaping the child's behavior moving forward. But if that's not done in the parental environment, if there's postpartum depression, if there's a lot of heavy things that the baby's not getting because of the mother or the father or whatever it might be, then yes, that can really impact. If a baby has a very strong temperament or a very assertive temperament, as they get older, it might be harder then as they navigate through the world, or they're smashing bugs or fighting back. It could be some of those energies that took place when they were really young. But by and large, yes, it's written on our heart, like you were saying. Yes.
Yeah, and to add to what you were saying, which was great. The mother, she's almost the embodiment of the internal womb as well, right? This is what the father is there to do, is to protect the mother while she goes through this process, and to provide needs. So absolutely, I mean, it makes sense. The mother has a huge impact on the internal world of the child in those first 6 months. And then later on, of course, and even within the first 6 months, I think the father has an influence on the external environment, on shaping the child's, view and qualities, internal and external. And this is why the coming of age years, it's also a metaphysical component. That metaphysical component is what? It's breaking away from the womb, the energetic womb of the mother. So for a little boy or a young boy that's becoming a man, it's breaking away from the nest, from the womb. And then for young girls, which is commonly known as like the dragon fight, could be the dragon fight, or it could be cohesion, but that is also an energetic breaking away from the womb. There's all of this type of stuff is occultism. I mean, I've read books and dived in mystery traditions that goes into the birthing process, and how modern society, we've strayed from the natural so much. Even what, unfortunately, what people put into their bodies during that process, what women eat, the microplastics, all this kind of stuff has an effect on the development of the child, not only spiritual, emotional, psychological, and physical as well. So all those categories. It's a big topic for people, and I always caveat these kind of topics where we're kind of listing out, best practices, and this is what you should do, best case scenarios. Hey, guess what? We're living in slavery. We're living in covert, hardcore slavery. So it's really, you have to use your will and do the best that you can. And this is kind of across the board when it comes to, at least parenting or just life in general. You got to exceed and apply that will and force yourself to evolve and do better. But make no bones about it, right? We are in this state of war. So it's hard for people when people hear information on best case scenario and that didn't apply to them during that experience, or it's hard for it to apply for them now. This is where we kind of get into semantics. I'm talking about day-to-day functions. Morality, there's no excuse for it, right? I mean, you have to understand morality and strive for a moral life. How, in your line of work, in your practice, do you communicate with parents on kind of the state of affairs in the world? And if so, what's your response, or what's their response? and just kind of how do you navigate that, having a practice such as yours and being an educator and an influencer?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, so far with parents, right? We it's just we move into common sense areas. For example, like the mainstream media and the news, just shut it off. You don't need that fear into your family environment. That's just common sense. So speaking from that, like, you know, hey, your child's feeling pretty anxious. We got to sort of do these commonsensical things to protect, so there's no fear in the home. So start, shut off the news. Try not to have that on so much if that's the case. Bring that down. Um, that's one piece of getting away from that, tractor beam of sucking people in, right? So that's the common sense piece there. Um, when parents, if they're having new babies or new children, I say, please look into it, because vaccines probably aren't the best for your child at all. So I would look into that before you would do anything. Just get some research on that. So I try to share that in that regard. Knowing that giving your child the respect and honoring their own authority in their life, that's another thing that I help parents navigate. So I'm slowly moving into this idea that common sense stuff, keep the fear out. Do your research when you're doing some of these medical interventions, and then the autonomy of your child, the respect of their own world, their own mind, their thoughts and their feelings. So as you parents, as I talk to them, if there's battles going on between them, common sense stuff, let's think about taking a pause, hearing what your child is actually saying, your teenager or your, bratty 11-year-old, whatever it is. Hear what they're trying to say so you can bring their mind in. You're giving them that respect. So underneath, you're showing them that they have their own thought life. It's worthy, and it should be considered into the family dynamic. So you're building in that occult knowledge that we take responsibility, that what we say is what we create, and that you respect each other as you're navigating. So that's how I do that. I bring the occult knowledge and just make it common sense in the parenting, as I help coach parents, as I help with the kid. And then if children, they're teenagers and they're in school and stuff, then we talk about, like, if they come up and like the teacher was this, and they're talking about these really heavy government policies, and I was like, well, what do you think? What's that? Well, yeah, I see that you're upset with it because it does these things, and I can see that that's coming up for you. And I think you have a good mind on that you're actually, sharing if you've talked, said something back in school to the teacher or something. I'm glad you did it. You're sharing your voice. This is important. And then, or if there's a fight in school, if they're really young and someone gets in a fight, well, I was like, well, it's important who started it. And I tell parents, it depends on it. It's important who started it. I don't care what the teacher or the principal says, it's who started it. And I want to make sure that you understand that we're all here to get morality. We don't harm anybody. And if you start it first, then yes, you have to take responsibility for it. I've had some teenagers get in a fight and they've had to they started it, and I've had to say, well, you got to go back and make it right. I think this is important for your health, help sort of guiding in that, and then talking to the parents. This is what happened. I think it's, in my professional opinion, I think it's helpful that he goes back and makes it right again. So it's that sort of process of adding in those sort of peppering in sort of this occult knowledge, but putting it into the practical.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I take a similar a thought process with even my content, right? I mean, just reading occultism, you could read and study 1,000 hours, read 1,000 books of occultism. If it's not applicable in the real world, in the modern age, it's going to be very difficult and hard to understand and apply. So as one great work, content creators, whatever you want to call us, educators, influencers. This is part of our job. This is kind of what we signed up for, is simplifying the profound, the quote that I like
Yes,
to use. This is
I
what we
like
need
it.
to do. The occult arts and sciences, bring it down to the real world, get it grounded,
Mm-hmm.
streetwise,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
great that you're utilizing that knowledge in your practice and in your work.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes someone just needs a shift in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like a good portion of your practice, you're kind of like this common sense facilitator. You're
Mm-hmm.
just kind of
Mm-hmm.
reminding human beings that, look, we have this common sense. It's
Mm-hmm.
right there in front of us. It's easy to figure out. It's inside you as well. Once you
Correct.
take the time and attention and look, you will discover it. And a lot of these things is kind of how I was raised, being blessed in a family that was like really big and grounded on common sense. I mean, lying was
Mm-hmm.
a huge issue in my family, which I
Mm.
think that's great. That's a good value.
Mm-hmm.
My parents gave me huge amount of freedom for me to fail. They supported me in my failures, and they supported me in my endeavors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to, like you said earlier, to honor our children in many situations.
Mm-hmm.
As age increases, the coming of age, so does their responsibility, their
Mm-hmm.
accountability, their
Yep.
autonomy. All
Yep.
of that needs to be respected, because
Yes.
I still see parents looking at their children, even when they get into, preteens and teenagers, even beyond that, as they have a authority or they're superior to them. They know best, respect your elders, this kind of stuff, without the preliminary trust,
Yes.
respect,
Mm-hmm.
morality, ethics. Like, that's why kids, teenagers will
Mm-hmm.
rebel against that,
Mm-hmm.
because those are qualities and characteristics of slavery and
Mm-hmm.
coercion and duress, right? That's what it leads to. So
Correct.
freedom is built within us to strive for. It's built in all living beings to strive for. It's a part of creation. I think at its essence, pure creation is ultimate freedom.
Yep. 100%.
So it doesn't matter if it's a plant, animal, mineral, amoeba. It's striving
Mm-hmm.
to evolve, to reproduce, to be free
Mm-hmm.
in some
Mm-hmm.
form or fashion, right? It's a
Correct.
gradient. So yeah.
Yeah, and adding to what you're saying, to that freedom, under getting to understand and pull in what freedom actually means, and that includes morality. That is the foundation to psychological health. And this is not talked about in psychology or
Mm.
psychoanalysis. They don't want to go there because it's a moral issue, or it means like a judgment, a good or a bad. And therapists are supposed to be non-judgmental. Correct. We are supposed to be non-judgmental. However, and that's fine, because I'm there and I'm listening. We're not judging. We're just taking in what's happening in the process with the child in play, with the adult, with the couple that's across from me. I'm taking it in, and we're processing together in a non-judgmental stance
Mm.
at the beginning. However, you then have to come to recognize, okay, what's the most helpful and what's not the most helpful. And if someone's life is full of, just, overtly harming people, or they're disrespecting themselves, there's going to be a lot of psychological unhealth in there. But if one can come to the position of self-respect, of self-love, and knowing that I'm valuable, all life is valuable, and I wish to protect it, and I wish to grow in that process, to help grow and nurture, well, then you're balanced. That's the beginning of psychological health. That's the route in which you can then branch forward and then think more about the inner dynamics. But I don't think you can have full psychological health unless you have a full understanding of morality, and the respect for yourself and others. That's the piece that really helps blossom health.
100%. Absolutely. That's a fantastic point, because it's the foundation.
Yes.
Morality is the foundation. And this is why this topic is so important, and why, and I get this a lot, people equate morality with religion.
Yes. Correct.
This is another kind of
It's,
obfuscation that has happened
yes.
with religion, is that it's not it's mind-blowing to me how often that happens. Like, morality is just this fluff topic that's just for religionists, and social dynamics. Each social arena or culture gets to choose their own morals, when they're mixing that up with values or ethics. I look at ethics as attached to morality. It's the internal characteristics of ethics. If you're looking at an organization, right, it's the internal characteristics on how that organization operates, but that does not negate morality. Morality is bedrock. That's foundational. When you have good, healthy ethics, it will increase and lead you onto a strong path of morality, of staying strong on that path. But then again, the ethics can change. They're slightly relative in different social atmospheres and cultures as well. But regardless, that morality, objective bedrock remains. But it's mind-blowing. Have you got that? People, conflating morality with religion, constructs of religion?
Yes. And the piece that adds to that is the shame. Because when one talks about morality, it's all of a sudden now we're talking about my behaviors. Oh, what I do in the shadows, or what, all the shame might start coming up. So it has this really difficult thing, because morality is talked about in churches and religion. So that's where we most hear about it. In academia, maybe in philosophical circles, you're talking about morality because that's a philosophical topic. But in general, yes, morality is a religious thing. And then religions just mess it all up so badly. And so as we're doing the one great work, as we're talking about morals, we're fighting negative knowledge. And so you're just like, that's not, we're not trying to go there. So what can help with that is understanding that if we say it's a science, which it is, morality is a science. It is something not to be believed, but you can know it. That's the decisive piece, because mainstream exoteric religion moves into belief, and that can sometimes can be the enemy of knowing, right? And so if we can understand it as a science, which it is, input, output, observable over time. You can keep doing it. It's the same thing. That's the scientific method. Now we can understand morality for what it truly is. It is a knowing, not a belief. And that's what can clarify and cut that mind control. When someone speaks morality, they think religion.
Yeah, man, 100%. And it's a fantastic, in a dark way, fantastic method that the social engineers have obfuscated the topic of morality within the exoteric religions, right? Because what I find fascinating, and I spent a whole year and a half, 2 years, and I've been into occultism for many, many years, but when I got into natural law kind of territory, I was gathering books on natural law, on actual cosmic law, like, the Hermetic principles. You can talk about the Kabbalion and all this kind of stuff. But to what I've found out, I have about 30 books on natural law, moral law, same type of information that we talked back, but have came from Catholic priests or other religionists. And as I'm reading these books, I'm like, holy shit, you could just take out certain words, right? Catholicism. You could take out these words and it still is right on the money on the definition of morality and how
Mm-hmm.
it's expressed. So they're using this occulted science,
Mm-hmm.
and they're using that for their
Mm-hmm.
own personal gain in
Mm-hmm.
religions. That was my
Mm-hmm.
point.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they throw, Jehovah or Yahweh in the mix, right? You could take
Mm-hmm.
those out, and you
Mm-hmm.
could replace them just with nature or creation
Mm-hmm.
or creator,
Mm-hmm.
any kind of term, and it still holds up. But absolutely, it's a verifiable, quantifiable science
Mm-hmm.
that we can utilize and know, like you said. And that is one of the biggest problems that I find personally, is people equate it to religion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just straight ignorance, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
relativistic mindset, that atomist mindset,
Mm-hmm.
materialist mindset, that if I can't see it and it's not tangible, which natural law, the effects, it can be tangible when you're
Mm-hmm.
enslaved in overt slavery, shackles and chains, or even covert, right? But
Mm-hmm.
still, that knowledge, that the lack of that knowledge it's been so just, people have such a hard time trying to consider the metaphysical components. I
Mm-hmm.
love metaphysics. I love
Mm-hmm.
diving into metaphysics. It's the realm of the unseen
Yes.
forces. So people they battle me left and right, but yet they believe in wind. They talk about consciousness. They talk
Mm-hmm.
about all these other factors, energy, and they talk about all these other unseen factors. But when it comes to cause and effect, about the behaviors, the choices that we take, and what's the consequence of those,
Yes. Uh-huh.
it's it automatically gets pushed into a religion category. And it's just mind blowing to me. And I'm constantly thinking about strategies and ways to convey this type of message to people. And that's ultimately what we need. We need to be able
Yes.
to convey this to, the atheists, the materialists, the new age people, any type of person. Because what we're really doing is breaking and cracking their calcification, their
Correct.
worldview, how they view the world. It's so calcified and rigid that we are there to influence and to try to break away and crack that box that they're stuck in.
Yes.
And that's why, something as planting seeds, or, dropping these hints, or really getting someone to relate to your own experience, has a profound effect. When they can
Yes.
relate to you, then it sinks in, and
Mm-hmm.
they can apply it to their life. Because we could talk about these concepts all day and people will agree, until you apply it to the real world and you start talking about, well, government is slavery. Then they go, oh,
Yes.
wait a minute, we need government.
Uh-huh.
Human beings are bad. We have to have a control system. We have to be enslaved, etc. All these other excuses.
Mm-hmm.
So, this work
Right on.
is modern day philosophy. It's modern day wizardry.
I like that. Yep.
And
Correct. I would agree.
that's
100%.
what the type of stuff we're doing. I like to use the term influencer. When someone hears that, they think of, the YouTubers. I'm not talking about pranks or cat videos. We're talking about philosophy. This is what it comes
Yes.
down to. The deep, big questions that have an impact on everything.
Correct. Yep. 100%. And what we're going up against is, I would call it, the narcissistic woundedness. What we didn't get from our parents pulls us into a longing to be valid and to not be seen as bad. And that's that unconscious dynamic that happens. So we're all on a range of not getting validated by our parents. And some are hyper in that realm. And all of us, it's very hard for us to be called out, because it instantly starts cascading into, well, then I'm bad. And then if I'm bad, then who's going to want to love me and be with me? How am I going to be connected to somebody if I'm bad? And that's how they felt when they were younger. If they sit down and think about it and do shadow work or go into therapy, you would come to realize that I need my mom and dad, and I can't be bad because if I'm bad, then I lose them. This is what we're up against. So when someone says your behavior is wrong and you're actually a bad person for doing this behavior, you're smacking right at it. And they're not going to take that in. They just won't. And that's the problem. If we can sit and think before we take something in and process it and say, okay, am I big enough to take in what is just said? Can I sit with it? And because I want to grow, then I move forward? And so most people won't take that route because they're trying to protect the wounds that are in them. So all that to say is the process of that's what we're up against too when we talk about morality, when we talk about government as slavery, these things, because it's self-loathing. It's the narcissistic woundedness is the I hate myself. And really everyone around them, they're bad, oh, whatever, I hate myself. But if you get to a process where you heal the narcissistic wounds by first thinking, if that applies, and say, okay, how can that fit into my life? Then you grow from it. Then you start loving yourself. Then you start realizing all the organizations around us that prey off of that self-loathing and that exist because of our own self-loathing. You'll see the difference then.
It's a reflection, right? It's absolutely
Yes.
a reflection. Like what we got going on in the world today with government and its institutions is the shadow manifested, the collective
Correct.
shadow manifested.
Yep.
And that's what it is, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's 100%. That is, you can tell how moral a society is on if there's a government and how big the government is, right?
That's right. Yep. Yeah, dude, 100%. One thing that I've learned, being public for, a few years now is it really does, as far as, connecting with someone and someone being receptive, it comes to that first stage of teachability. We all have our level of teachability, which teachability is one's own ability to learn by being taught from someone else, right? So high teachability would mean that you are present, you are slightly skeptical, and slightly trusting. So there's that balance. Low teachability is you're either 100% skeptical, you don't believe anything, nothing's real, right? Or you're completely gullible and arrogant and trusting, right? You just believe everything and on that spectrum. So we need that balance. But the reason why I say that it comes down, like teachability is that marker, that beginning marker. And there's a reason why, like Mark Passio starts presentations after his caveats, but he starts with teachability, is because if someone has low teachability, they are not present, they are not receptive to anything that is coming into them. They will not consider the information whatsoever, whether they are skeptical or overly trusting, on a dogmatic level. So that's kind of what I have discovered doing this work over the last few years, is that people aren't listening truly, like what it means to listen. Like the definition
100%.
of listening is to attend, to hear, but hear like H-E-A-R, but also H-E-R-E. You are present, right? So you have that balance of attention and care. And a lot of people, even in the freedom movement and the alternative movements, they aren't there. They're still in that, like you said, solipsistic mindset where it's just about them. Most of the time, they're just waiting for someone to take a breath so they can interject their own thoughts or bullshit or whatever they want. So practicing present moment awareness and truly listening, even if it's something that goes against what you know, if it's a contrary, belief or information or whatever, that talent, that attribute of listening is gold. And this is something that people need to practice all the time, even when they've taken in information, they've applied it, they've ran it through the trivium, and, they've discovered that it is true, they know it. Still, the practice of listening must be present, because that's what it is. It's present moment awareness.
Yep.
And it's a huge fault in especially the alternative movements and the freedom movements.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I like your train of thought there, and how you articulated that topic. I want to add a little bit to that. What I talk about humility is, knowing when to, shut your mouth and open up your ears. So that's humility. So when you're finding someone who knows and who's studied more and is more well read, and they're actually saying something you don't know, then shut your mouth and listen and take it in. Be present, be in the here and the now, take that in. And then the other part of humility is knowing that you do know you've taken stuff in, and know when you can speak out, because you have got the information and you have important information to share. That's humility. So sharing, but also shutting your mouth when you need to shut your mouth, right?
Absolutely.
And that's that process of being in the present moment to listen. And I think that even ties back to even what I was saying about the narcissistic woundedness. We always want to, you got to fill me up. You have to fill me up. I got to make sure you fill me up. I got to get it, because I'm in a panic inside. Unconsciously, it's a panic inside you to get validated. And that needs to be worked on so heavily for you to be in a position where you can take in and grow. And then as you grow and take in, then you can speak. But that panic, that narcissistic woundedness needs to be healed. Or that's what we call, sort of in the pop sort of psychology, we call that the ego, but that's, I want to add to what you were saying there, but yeah, right on. And
yeah, man, that fantastic. I was really digging that. Present moment awareness, listening, these are attributes of really having the ego in control.
Yes, correct. Yep.
That's
agree.
what those are characteristics of. Humility as well, empathy. All of these things are healthy egoic attributes, because
Correct.
I'm definitely not, fond of like the New Age movement that is all about ego death and destroying the ego, which is kind of like, it's totally obscene that they come to those kind of conclusions. It's almost like they don't know what the ego is. Absolutely, we have an ego in this physical manifestation. Why we're here, we always will until we die. Of course, that can be out of balance, and we can be in a dominant egoic state, and that's where the narcissist really loves to thrive. And then we can have that balance and the healthy aspect of the higher self and the ego, both coming together and being in a state of balance, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. I like how you said that. And my mind went to this, adding to that, pushing it in, the divine feminine, the divine masculine. The divine feminine is listening, taking in, nurturing, and then giving back. And then the divine masculine is stepping up when you have to step up to share and to create into things. So it's also being in the present moment awareness and growing is a balance of the divine masculine and divine feminine as well.
Yep, 100%. That's the principle of gender.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, definitely, man. So I want to get into real quick. This has been a fantastic chat.
Yeah.
I want to get into a little bit about your experience with your practice and utilizing the PMA application.
Sure.
I'm I've been aware of PMAs for, I don't know, a couple years, but I haven't dove deep into it. I think they can be powerful because, one, yes, we have this control system that we are all tied to in some form or fashion. And I think, of course, it's artificial, it's immoral. But I think something like a PMA can give someone that is trying to create a business or an organization, you know, you can correct my terminology,
Sure.
a way to kind of an option to kind of navigate in this system. And the
Uh-huh.
allegory that I like to use is Neo in the Matrix. He goes in, he's waking people up in the real world, but yet he has to go into the Matrix from time to time and to you know, affect change in there. And that's something that us as individuals in our current state of affairs, we have to do that as well. I see people, you know, really kind of, they have an unhealthy, an unbalanced look at money, about what it is, and how to utilize it as a tool in the quote unquote matrix. And you know, there's that purist mindset where it's, you know, um, don't even pay sales tax, so don't buy anything, right? Or it's just that purist mindset of it's just not healthy. It's not healthy in our current state. So I'm rambling, but go ahead,
Yeah,
explain to
no, no
me
worries.
how
Yeah.
you created your the short version. I know it's a process,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Um, I'll see if I can sort of organize it a little bit so it's succinct here, so I'll do my best. The part is that since what we were talking about, we are divine beings, and what we say gets created. It puts into our environment. It influences, right? What we say can create. And that's all that governments do. They just say something. They, or a group of people, get together, they write something down on a paper, and then they say, here it is. Do you want to follow it or not? Really, but usually use violence, but and it makes it sound as if it's coming from God, or they have some voice that create, but it's not. It's just a bunch of people getting together and they write something down. So
hmm,
you can get together and write something down and it creates it. That's really what a PMA is. But it basically is this idea where if a group of people get together and they have organizational rules and how things should operate, and they have a moral code about them, and they all are going to an agreement, then that is a self-sustained system. They've just created their own jurisdiction, and no other jurisdiction can get involved with that jurisdiction unless there is an acceptance. And if there's not acceptance, then they can't get involved. That's what a PMA is. So if a group of people get together, they organize it, they have a moral code, and they say, this is what we do, we all adhere to this, then it becomes in the private. You're not in the public sector in terms of government. Government's usually a public thing that they oversee the public, who individuals who have not individuated themselves into the private, they oversee those folks. So if you say, hey, I don't want to be in the public anymore, I'm moving into the private, here's an organization, here's how it works, then that jurisdiction is solid. You're taking 100% responsibility for your own actions inside that jurisdiction, the PMA. Therefore, the government then is like, okay, you're taking care of, you're taking responsibility, we don't have to worry about you anymore. Is this idea. Family members, a household is a PMA. There's a hierarchy, there's a system, there's rules. That's a PMA. So what I'm saying is, we are divine beings and we can create. And once it's created and we're taking responsibility, we're not harming anyone, then we're protected. So does that help a little bit? That's how that's
no,
works.
that was great, right? PMA, private membership
Ship
association.
association, yes.
So it's the freedom. It's based on the principle of freedom of association.
Correct.
And it's actually recognized in the Constitution. Take that for whatever it's worth, right? But it's interesting to kind of dive down this rabbit hole, because the government clearly is showing there's like two classes of people that they recognize: the public, commerce, the common folk, and then the private, where we see, a lot of even celebrities and these, these big corporations kind of try to work their way into as well. So how's your practice going under the PMA? Have you had any pushback from the state in any form or fashion? Is it going smooth?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It seems like, from my kind of research,
Uh-huh.
it really becomes not really well, there's going to have to be a response at some time, especially if there's high volume of income, or not, it's not called income, but if there's exchanges and goods, or if the PMA gets to a certain volume or number of people, then you might have to respond, play in the court system or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And no, not necessarily, actually. So a few things. So with and remind me if I missed something that you said, but the PMA system, it's just you're just assembling together. Now, be very clear. We harm no one. It is a creation that I don't harm anyone. I don't steal. I'm not a criminal. I'm not taking someone's property. I don't do that. Okay. And this is when we assemble together, we need to take responsibility for that. We don't harm anyone. That has to be understood. That's our protection. So we're not harming. There is no harm. So in that regard, then you as a PMA to have it, or it's also called an unincorporated association is another way, or a club. You can call it a club. There's different ways to do it. But when you create it, you never want to pull in any other jurisdiction. You don't pull in other things and saying, well, we're protected by this piece of paper by another government, no, that's their stuff. That's their PMA. You create your own system, so you never pull anything in. Therefore, then it's private. So no membership list needs to be shared. Nothing. It's only private, and only the trustees, only the board members, the trustees, they only have that information. That's it. And no one can come around and say, and even if they are, they're trespassing inside the PMA, and that's all written in bylaws and everything. Yeah. So as long as you're not harming, and you all in this membership agreement, you're signing that we all live under natural law, we take responsibility, and we're doing what's right and helpful for people. That's what we do here, and that's it. End of story. Now, for me, knowing that, I had to get rid of all my government contracts. So that's my license, my practice license, that's my business license. I had to rescind those contracts and end them, because I can't have them being involved into a private sector. You can't mix the two. They have to be separate. So I then had to do methods to end all those contracts. And I did. I ended those contracts in honor. They're done. They're over. Now I operate in the jurisdiction of the PMA. So yes, so I haven't, and so there hasn't been any pushback or anything. It's just ending and moving on. I'm moving on peacefully. I'm not involved with you, and you don't get involved with me, and we leave each other alone. And so then the PMA has its own sort of structures and systems in place where it doesn't get involved. Now with Monai, it's a way you can navigate that in a way where the revenue, the services that come in keep the PMA going, and it stays in a loop to keep the PMA going. You don't use any of all their words or any of their stuff that they use. So you just leave that alone, and you just create it organizationally from your mind. And I've had help. I had a place that helped me understand that. I went to them, and they drafted up the documents for me. And then I took about 3 months in really processing it and making it my own, and then coming to to a position of knowing that if I get pressed on, but I wouldn't. But if I did, I know how to say, here it is, and this is how I defend and stand up. And we're we keep everybody in honor. If another jurisdiction comes in, I stay in honor, and I make sure they stay in honor, and then we move forward. We're not doing anything to harm anyone.
That's right. Yeah, no, and fantastic. It's kind of, it's claiming your individuation. You're
Correct.
separate from the government, the public government, as long as, of course, it always comes down to morality, right?
Yes.
If immoral actions are being taken place, some type of theft or murder, of course, the government's going to step in. That's going to absolve the PMA itself. But private membership association, I think it's something that's it's talked about just from just a few people. It's a good thing for people to look into, especially with some type of exchange of energy. I do not have a PMA. I'm a contractor. I'm my own boss. I come from a family business. I did not take over the business because I refused to get a contracting license, and I refused to contract with the state with taxes and other government stuff. I refuse to do that. I am decently successful with my company. It's from the ground up. I had to get my name out there. I just work from how I convey my experience, my craftsman work, actually doing the jobs, and then referrals and customers checking out my work and being satisfied and spreading the message that way. So there's only one transaction of energy, and that's me to the other person. That's it. And I'm not on any books, I'm not in any systems, and I don't have to report, nor would I.
Correct.
But a PMA can be something I think powerful for people to kind of look into. And again, it's not full on fail safe, but it's a good lead, definitely.
Correct. And I like what you said there too, and what your endeavors are. That's right. You really don't even need a PMA as long as you're not signing their paperwork. Just stop signing their paperwork. And then, yes, you have to be a bit creative to pull in resources from others. That's true, because you don't get the mainstream of how all that system works, but it's just explaining it correctly so people get the concept. And so if one was to do it, back out of the contracts, that's where I learned with equity, learning how to say, I made it by mistake, I'm done, close everything out. And then, then that's it. And then as long as you're not signing, then you're good. Because once you put your name on something, they assume, the government entities, they assume, okay, well, you agree. Now you become liable for their bylaws. They're just a PMA as well. And they have bylaws. And as a member, a citizen, you're a member of the U.S., not the United States of America, the landmass known as the United States, but the U.S. as a company. And so as a citizen, you're a member, so therefore you're liable. So that's what happens. So as long as you are not signing, or any contracts that you do have, you pull them out and you are removing liability. And that's the core of all occult knowledge, is I take 100% responsibility for my own actions. And I only do things that are voluntary when we fully both understand what we're doing. Living men and women are getting involved with. We fully understand that process. That's the full ownership. That's where our divinity lies. The governments are just psychopathic entrepreneurs. That's what they are. They realize people don't get this, and they need a mommy and daddy, based on the self-loathing that we're all into, based on the mind control techniques that we're in. They use that then to create this PMA where it pulls people in, and then they get this energy off of that. They're entrepreneurs. They know there's a market for it, and they know there's a consumer for the market. And so they got an endless amount supply of people. So that's what that is. But
salesmen. That's what they are. They're taking other people's stuff and trying to sell it to back to them.
Correct. That's right. And so again, just a part of as you awaken more of these ideas will come to your heart, will open up. You'll figure out these paths. More paths will open up. And you'll begin to understand that as long as you don't harm anyone and you declare it publicly, I do not harm, I do not harm. As you declare that publicly, you move forward, then you can find systems to be in your power and create outside of that old dark system.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I love it because, I mean, that's kind of the motto I live by. I want full radical responsibility. I want to
Yes.
be responsible for what I create
Uh-huh.
and be accountable for what I do. And,
Yes.
I do not steal and I do not kneel. And
Correct.
I live by that, right? Mark said
Uh-huh.
that recently in
I
the
like
How to Become the
that.
True Media class, which
Yes.
you are also a student. This is a
Yes.
great
Uh-huh.
way to transition into what you're thinking of the seminar How to Become the True
Mhm.
Media by Mark Passio,
Yep.
and then after this we'll take a few questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, first of all, Mark is so patient. Oh my goodness. I mean, I work with tech. I did tech help desk for 4 years at my university, so I'm kind of a computer guy too. And I thought I was patient, but Mark is so patient and generous with people. It's really really nice to hear his heart, and he does care and he wants to give that out. And most of the stuff I know, so I know a lot of it right now. I'm still learning these tidbits of like, he's like, oh, I didn't know that. So little stuff that's helping me. So it'll probably get more heavy for me as the weeks go forward, about the content creation and polishing things up and, stuff like that. But I know a lot of that already. Um, so, um, learning sort of the stuff that how his computer mind works, learning that's been really helpful, watching him and be so patient, hearing the other students saying how helpful it was to understand how computers work and how to navigate a computer. Mark does it very systematically, so it builds. He's really good at doing that, building one scaffolding layer on another on another. So that's been really great. But having him being so patient is really good. So it's been fun. I'm meeting, I've gotten to connect with you more, Will. I've met some really awesome students that there's energy, there's passion. They want to get it done. They want to get going. Some students are just starting. They're just making it happen. So I think it's a really necessary endeavor that Mark is doing. It's very necessary because he's right. We're not writing letters to people to try to influence them about morality. We're not writing, books, okay, but really it's that's the live stuff happening right now that people tune in on their devices and they're getting information. That's how it happens. And, Will, you're very polished and professional in what you're doing. So it's really getting all of us to that stage so we can keep producing more content.
Yeah, well said. I mean, this is it the fourth or fifth year he's doing this? Anyways, I learn new stuff every year. Not
Yep.
only is Mark a fantastic teacher,
Mm-hmm.
but like you said, connecting with the students, seeing that passion and drive coming from the students, some of them just starting for the first time, some of
Yes.
them like you already have
Uh-huh.
started
Mm-hmm.
and have more advanced knowledge. It's just a good way to network. It's a great way to get your feet out there, get
Yes.
comfortable with the audio and the video. Um, just incredible experience. I love it every year. I look forward to it, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly learning. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a great experience, and it's gonna pick up too. So
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm ready. It's good.
yeah, awesome. All right, I want to get into just a few questions
All right.
before we wrap it up. My good friend Sarah. Question: do you guys think that how we conduct ourselves in normal life, not just within the preset of natural law, but how we present ourselves and set an example matters in the big picture of things?
Y- Yeah, definitely. There was a quote by a theologian, something back when I was studying, like if you have preaching the gospel, but if you must, I'm butchering it really badly, but you can preach the gospel by your actions by not using words. So if we're to put that into the natural law context, yes, our actions are huge, like being an inspiration to people, like, hey, this is what I've done. I can't be involved in these systems anymore. So I've had to take the hard line and the sacrifice of what this might mean. And so that's an inspiration to people and sharing it. And in the day to day, like usually you're going to find me wearing a natural law t-shirt. That's where I wear out in public all the time. I'm always wearing that. Where like, government slavery, or this one I'm wearing, it's like says support your local gun shop. So I'm always have this, this energy going. So yes, the actions I think are really important. But Will, I jumped in real quick on that, but go ahead, Will.
No, that was perfect. Yeah, and she reposted that question. She was saying such as manners, politeness, etc. And yes,
that's a good point too.
I absolutely agree with you, Dustin, for sure. It's one thing to know this information, morality and ethics and who we are, these, big, important, deep topics. But it's another thing to live it and be authentic.
Correct. Correct.
And it needs to be through our very being and essence. And that is what is important. And I think that's what is also important for longevity as a content creator as well. I'm going to do this work for as long as I live. I might not be well known by it, but to me, I have that obligation, and I'm going to do it regardless, try to educate the public and be that influence and that guiding light as best as I can. And I have to show up for myself first, because if I'm not being that person, if I'm not being ethical and moral within myself, how can I be that example to the external world? So absolutely, they're one and the same. They are reflections, and it is correspondence at its finest.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, the law of correspondence, correct. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Great question. Let's see. We got... here's another one. Mark is an awesome teacher. Shout out to this year's class. Right on, my brother.
Yeah, right
Proof,
on.
Anarchist. He was a student as well.
Awesome.
Dustin, do you have any resources where I can view information about PMAs and such?
Well, the one place I went to is Genoa Institute. I think it's genoainstitute.org. The website's a little sparse, but the guy that runs it, he helped me navigate that space. So I went there. There's some videos on YouTube about PMAs. If you type it in, there's some stuff there. Actually, it's kind of sparse. Here's just what I would recommend. If you would want to know more information, the Jonah Institute, you can schedule a consult with the guy, and you can pick his brain. I think it's like $35, or it might be $50, but it's for an hour, and you can just pick his brain and you can get information from him. I did that. I think I spent like 3 sessions talking with him until I fully felt comfortable in doing what I needed to do. So that's how I got that information. I don't use Telegram that much anymore, but I think there's some good channels on Telegram about PMAs as well. So that might be something you can look into. I don't know if that was the most helpful answer, but there you go.
Yeah, I don't have any resources off the top of my head, but I would say, yeah, do that preliminary research on the video platforms.
Yes.
Telegram has channels as well.
Yes.
And yeah, start there.
Yeah, there's another good book, George Messier's Invisible Contracts. It's about 500, 600 pages long, and he's a little scattered as he's writing. But if you take your time with that book, you'll get an idea of how things work a little bit better. You'll get sort of a concept of how contracts work and that process. I say it's a good primer as you're getting involved in understanding the two different worlds. That's a good sort of foundational help. Again, it's not the most easiest read because the way he writes, but if you just take your time with it and just start absorbing how his mind is, what the concept of what he's talking about, I think that could be a good help as well.
Well said. Excellent. Love it. Yeah, and we got some great comments in here. And then another question. do you guys want to be on my radio show? We could talk more about this. This is Sarah Cross. She has a radio show on Revolution Radio, Studio A, Crosstalk.
Awesome.
Yep,
Oh,
and that's
awesome.
Wednesdays, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay.
It's a yes for me, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's on it. Let's make it happen.
All right. Excellent. Sarah, can
Great.
reach
Yeah.
out
Thanks,
to
Sarah.
us.
Thanks,
Yep,
Sarah, for the invite.
That would be great. I would love to do that for sure. She says, yep, I would love to know more about this PMA stuff. Very interesting. Yeah, it's a good topic to dive into. I know David Greenberg, also a content creator on the One Great Work Network. He's getting into, I'm pretty sure he touches into the PMAs. He also gets into the letters of, the name escapes. It's some type of letters that you can submit to debt collectors, and you can use affidavits and stuff like this.
Yeah, affidavits. There's one called the 3-step process, where you clarify if there's a debt, and then you give them time to notice, and if the default, you send it in again. So that's the administrative process. That's what that's called. That's another way of doing it. I don't know if that's what you're saying, Will, but that's another thing that came to my mind.
Yep, there's a whole bunch of them. Kind of how I feel on this topic is they're absolutely hit or miss. We're talking about, I mean, the philosophy of what the system is comes first. It's this artificial construct of the minds of men, and it's immoral on its face, but it's here. It is the slave system. So it's relativistic at its core. That's how it operates. So sometimes these things work, sometimes they don't. I think Hexproof had another question, which kind of goes to what I'm saying. How to begin the process of rescinding government corporate contracts. There's tons of rabbit holes on, how to do that. I think it's important when you get into something like taxes. Obviously, when you get into equity and contracts with them, you're entering a whole nother realm. How I approach it is I'm not going to get into any contracts at all. And they don't even have information on me, my lifestyle, or whatever. So it's hard for them to even approach me. But when that time comes, obviously it's good to respond in some form or fashion. And, the research that one can do can give many pathways on the methods and the modalities on how to respond. What about you, Dustin?
Yeah, I agree. Simply, it's no. That's the easiest answer, just no. Now, here's that ties into natural law. Once you say no, and they keep pressing, then they are beginning to break natural law, because then they will, if the pressing is usually a violent tone to it, then you clearly state, does your record reflect I am under duress? Once you state that, you are now outside of their jurisdiction. They could not capture jurisdiction. So really it's no. And if they keep pressing with violence, does your record state I'm under duress? I'm under duress. That's how you press in on that. But again, it will really never really go there, because what you're doing beforehand is just sort of getting out of the contracts. Now to that question, it's a fancy way of saying no. Basically, you have to take responsibility. You signed the contract. You did it some time long ago. You signed it. So now there's a position where if you don't want to be involved, you're claiming your power back. You can say, I no longer want to be involved with this contract. I did it by mistake. I'm realizing now, and I'm taking responsibility, and I don't want to be involved anymore. And that's sort of a basic overview on how to think about that, because you can never ever give up your power. You can say it and you can sign a contract, but you still never gave up your power, because in any present moment you can bring it back. No, I made it by mistake. I'm done. I want everything to end. That's sort of that mindset to help you in that process.
Well said. Absolutely, man. I love it. That was excellent. My brother Chris Janston,
What's
ultimately
up,
our
Chris?
thoughts and actions, choosing responsibility in every way possible.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. All right, my brother, that's been a hell of a chat. I want to
Yes.
show your website again. Go ahead and people can go to freeasabove.xyz. Go there. You got, I think you just released this
Uh-huh.
presentation, right? Or this
Yes.
series. You want to
Uh-huh.
talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, the last part. So this is my Are You a Criminal series. So really it's this understanding of really knowing what a crime is. And a crime is any action when you harm someone. And then coming to understand that knowledge, then we realize all the livelihoods that are around us that actually are crimes. The people who are taking up that livelihood are the criminals, right? And so it's really sort of breaking that mind control process of understanding what a crime actually is, and then saying no and not supporting that. Oh, I'm sorry, my website just, oh, that's embarrassing. I got to fix that. It just went bad on me. Does that fix? Okay. The text is there, but I got to fix that. I didn't realize that. So, but yes, I'll fix that. Actually, I get off this live stream right now to fix that up. But anyways, but yeah, I talk about natural law. I talk about the law of freedom and love. And then there's my videos there. And then you can connect with me, and then the about page. So there you go. But I'll
Fantastic.
work on that. Yeah. Thanks for showing that, Will. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. I've seen a bunch of your videos. You do a fantastic job. You got great presence. When you're
Thanks, Will.
expressing this information, it's great. You explain it very well. So I highly recommend people go check out your content and support you any means necessary, man.
Okay.
And that's my dog. He's like, okay, it's time for a walk. Let's do this.
Yeah. Let's do it.
That was a great chat. And thank
Yeah,
you
brother.
to everyone who joined and
Yes,
and
thank you.
participated in the chat. And we'll see you next time. Dustin, my brother, thanks for joining me.
Yep, it was my pleasure. It was really fun. Heart's full.
Excellent. We'll do it again soon. I got some more live shows coming up. I took a little break, but I got some announcements in the near future. So I'm going to do a whole segment on that, and stay
That's
tuned.
awesome.
All right.
Yeah,
Y'all
man.
have a great night.